SaaS Coach, the Retention Series, and today we're going to be talking roadmap. But so far, we've been talking about, again, how do you get those users to keep coming back? Our last series, we really focused on conversions, getting those users on board. But then once they're on board, we have to worry about that churn, which could kill your business.
Yeah, that's what this whole series is about, is really how do we retain users, because it's great to put a ton of money into driving targeted traffic and increasing conversion, but if you're getting users and they're not staying, and we actually just talked to a client about this. They've got a great concept, and talking about the model that they're going to have from a pricing standpoint, some of the initial features that they're going to offer, other things like that to make sure that you keep that retention of a user, because especially if we're going to do, in-app advertising, let's say, and we're paying a bunch of dollars for clicks and we're actually getting people to download, last thing you want them to do is open up that app and then 2 days later they never open it again and delete it. And so that was a waste of dollars to acquire that user. And so this whole series that we're doing right now, I think it's going to be 10 or 12 episodes, is just how do we increase retention and reduce churn on sites.
I think a lot of people put the focus and thought on the new customers.
Right.
That's that's the exciting, that's the one that comes to mind, but how do you keep them? It's so important to have that, strong retention numbers, and there are intentional things that you can do to improve it. So that's what we've been talking.
And I think, like we talked in a couple of the previous episodes to this one, is that people make a lot of assumptions about retention, that they, of course we think our software is amazing and we think the feature ideas that we have are perfect and all of these things, and the reality is we're so ingrained in it that we have a bias towards what truly is a sticky product, or what things are going to keep people to stay, and what features we need to have. So that's all very important.
Yeah, for sure. So to this point, we have talked to Andy's mentioned there, we've talked about building a product that's sticky. Prior to that, we talked about onboarding.
Right.
And it all builds. This is what we like to do, is build off of, step by step, each principle at a time, and you can implement these as you go. But today we're talking roadmap.
Right. So principle number 3, 2 paths diverged in the woods, and I took the software roadmap less taken. So really it's just about, how do you choose the right features to be developing in your product. And we kind of hinted at this last week in our episode, but really it's about this process of looking at, what is that priority list, and how do we go through the process of developing the right piece of software.
Sure.
So one of the things that I thought was important to talk about, if people don't know, agile development. So agile development, and really just to kind of dumb this down and simplify for people, the old mindset a lot of times had been, let's build a software, put months and months and months of effort into it. We're going to build out our next big version, and then we're going to launch it. And it comes from the good old days of, you remember when you would go to Best Buy and buy like literally a box, and you would have CDs. And so those people, when they were developing that software, the model was, let's figure out what our version 6.0 is, and then we're going to launch, we're going to build for a year, we're going to put it on some CDs and send it out.
Because it's going to be shipped, right? It's something that's shipped, and then you're going to get another version at some point that's completely replaces. But that's the old world model, right?
Remember those days? You would go buy the CDs and you would have to maybe uninstall your software, put your 4 CDs in one at a time to get that sucker to install. That's how it used to be. And so, we moved to this model where stuff is in the cloud now, and it's software as a service. We're not shipping out disks. In many cases now, you're not even downloading a software. There's no downloading. You're just accessing something live, and that's how it should be. The thing that's shifted is the mindset of how we build and launch software has had to evolve as well, and it has significantly. This doesn't mean everybody follows this model, but it is a good one. So agile development is really about having much shorter cycles where you really are developing kind of a short list of improvements. Maybe that's one feature or that's a change to some features, but you're putting those into development, you're testing them, you're deploying it, and then you're putting it out to your users. And the goal is that then you can get quick feedback too on what you launch and come back around and start that process over. And so it's a much more iterative, quick, like let's build, launch, launch.
Yeah.
Not build, launch.
And when I look at the model, I always think that not only does this make more sense in today's world and in the SaaS ecosystem and environment, but it's also something that I think for me, it feels like it gives me a little relief as I'm thinking about if I'm launching a project or product, to not have to have everything built out, completely perfect, have all the answers, and then deliver it.
Yeah.
And then figure out, okay, what'll next version will we improve on? But rather, we're going to put something out there, and we can not include all the feature sets out of the gate, and we can find out what people like, and we can learn, and we can get that feedback, and then we can improve, and then we can add, and we can do it over time based on what our customers are telling us.
And if you're an established software company, this lets you quickly make improvements. But if you're a new one, like you just said, I think that mindset of let's sit and build. And again, I remember 7-8 years ago when we built a software for someone, and the mindset was still in that. And so you're building for 7 or 8 months. You're not making any revenue. You're not getting any user feedback. Versus today, I would get a minimum viable product MVP out there with just some limited feature sets just to start getting a sense of the marketplace and what do people think about it, and then potentially my roadmap significantly shifts based off of the data and the user feedback that I get. And so it's much smarter for me, and I have a much higher chance of being successful if I go in this model, especially early on. And it's tough. Again, we talk to these companies that want to develop products all the time, and these people have this big picture in their head, and they're thinking 5 years down the road, and they're saying, imagine if it could do this, and for this user and this user, and they get this sense of almost like discomfort when they start thinking about, oh, well, I can only do 10% of that to get something out now because they've got these big ideas. And
we got to rein them in.
That's our job, trust me. And how many clients have I said, look, one of my jobs is to tell you, no, we're not doing that, because I think that's such an important thing. And if you're working on an internal team, having those voices of reason are important. So that's kind of the start of this process. And again, agile planning, and we'll talk about product backlog in the next second, but really you have the features that you're going to be building, and then what they have is sprints. So, and I like that terminology. You're sprinting through something quickly. So X feature, we're going to sprint through it. You go through a quick process of 1 to 2 weeks, and analyze, design, build, test, review, ship it out, and then you're coming back around to the backlog, and hopefully then you're also getting feedback from data and users to potentially change what your backlog is. So what that kind of ties into is really the higher level of this, and how do you get to the backlog? So if the backlog is over here and our agile development that we just talked about, what are we looking at from more of a roadmap strategic perspective? So what I've got is on the left here, users, your team, and market. And so this is where ideas are coming from. Users, you're hopefully pulling data from analytics, you're getting user feedback, maybe you've got, there's sometimes like user committees where you have a group of people that use it often, that you meet with once a month to get feedback. Your own internal team coming up with ideas, and that crazy CEO or visionary that's just coming up with ideas every 2 seconds. You've got those pieces, and then the market looking at what competitors are doing. I want to look at what my competitors' softwares have, and if I'm in the space, I actually probably want to, if I can, pay for that competitor's software just so I can watch what they're releasing.
Yeah.
And so all this stuff goes up into kind of the concepts list, and it's really just a huge list of ideas. What are the features, the improvements, the new functionality? It's, hey, on this page, if we add a filter button and let people kind of rechange what is being shown, that's going to be this improvement. And so we've got a massive list. And then really what comes from that is that vetting process. So is there a logical, smart way to vet features? And this gets back to our past episode of stickiness.
Yep.
Is it solving a pain in a significant way? Like, are we really, is the pain level a 1 or a 10 for our target audience? Is it something that we think can be spun out into something new? How does it impact other features? We're going to go through a process of vetting to, one, find things that have high value and hopefully minimum cost from a resource and time and money standpoint. So we vet that stuff through, and hopefully that gets into a roadmap, which is a strategic plan of concepts. And for me, the roadmap is the bigger picture. What does this look like, in the next 6 months, the next year, the next 3 years? And it just has an organization of features from a high level.
Yeah. And the roadmap is going to change, right? Because as you go, you're making different decisions. You're basing next steps based on user feedback.
Exactly.
And all of that. So, but it's a matter of just continually adjusting course to keep it on target.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you're kind of pulling things out of the concepts list that don't get vetted. Roadmap, you're coming back and maybe moving things in between. And then really it's about prioritization into the backlog. So a roadmap, we should have some general prioritization, does it fit within the next 6 months, year?
Yep.
But then within that, we're going to do greater prioritization to put into our backlog so that we can go into the agile development process where we're producing new features or improvements every 2 or 3 weeks. And so really, once we get there, and again, once you go through that agile development, you're pulling in data and user information, and you're pushing through this all the time.
Yep.
And so again, it moves roadmaps from being what they used to be in the old days, where it's let's look out 3 years and a year and let's build for a year and launch. Hopefully then we'll get feedback from users, but that feedback from users probably won't be incorporated for another 2 years based on our cycle. To now, let's shorten all of that. Let's develop in quick hits. Let's get a ton of feedback, and let's change our concepts, our roadmap, and our backlog every month or every quarter. So it's just completely different approach to how a lot of people might think of it, especially if you're not in the software space. You may not think of software development like this. You think of it the old way of, get a disc in the mail after a year of development and building out a ton of features. So pretty crazy.
Yep, and it's to this point, it's kind of just an ongoing process. So it's cyclical. It works through here, and then back, start over again, and it's a constant, continuous process of always evolving, always changing, and incremental improvement.
And I think the key is in this vetting and prioritization process, really trying to develop some internal systems to do it. As we've talked through all of our episodes, we're really big on that, is turning things that are blank pages and open room discussions into logical exercises. Again, the vetting for me is, can you measure something on a pain index from 1 to 10? Can you measure something on a cost index from 1 to 10? Can you measure it on the index of how much it will impact other features? All of these different things. And when we have 1s to 10 or 1 to 10, maybe there's passion in there. We've talked about a bunch of different things in the past that you can evaluate. We should have a score. And so we have a list of concepts that all have a score, and maybe that score changes over time, but it's really doing it in some logical standpoint that we can sit in a room and we can all agree on the discussion points. And then same thing with prioritization, is we take that score and we add more to it to basically, again, logically walk through what moves next into the product backlog. So I think the big thing for companies, and especially ones that I've worked with in the software space, it's easy for a product team and the CEO and other people that get in a room and have these open dialogues, but they end up creating a lot of challenges that people disagree, and there's not, then you've got potentially a product team that has marching orders that they don't agree with, and so then they're not jumping into it as much, and you've got you've got a lot of challenges.
Confusion, overwhelm,
all that
sort of
good
chaos
stuff,
can
right?
come from that if you don't have that process in place. So I love your structure in the way that you.
Well, and you want to take bias out of it. You want to take emotion out of it. That's the whole point of this. Is a lot of the systems for me is how do I remove gut instinct? Some gut instinct. I do believe in some. But how do you remove that bias? How do you remove just arbitrary decisions and just build in some sort of system that helps you make logical, smart, strategic decisions about things? So, cool. So that's all about roadmaps. Again, I think it comes down to have a plan for how you're going to develop. Agile is a great way. Have a way for you to take ideas from multiple places, including competitors, users, your team, be able to vet those and do it in a logical way, then moving into developing that roadmap and continuing the prioritization process. And if you're doing that on a constant basis, you're really building something that hopefully will have high value, high stickiness, and help you scale, which is what we're all about, and retain users.
And ultimately, I was going to say, ultimately retain users as you're building a product that's just improving, offering more value.
100%.
Users, it's you're zeroing in on what the users want.
And that's what it's really about. I mean, if you're going to retain users, which is what this series is all about, it's giving them the right features that meet their that pain index, that provide value,
keep them coming back regularly,
and you're not just pushing out stuff that is meaningless to them and that they don't use. I mean, that ends up not being a successful way to create a product.
Great way to look at it.
Cool. Well, next week, let's see, what do we got? Data. So got goals, get data. This is obviously a huge piece. This principle, I think, underlies pretty much all of them, is that we are all about data, whether you're creating a new idea or you're figuring out your roadmap, creating stickiness, and probably all the principles coming forward is what are you measuring, how are you looking at it, and how do you use data to make smart decisions.
To your point on our approach of looking at things logically, basing it on the evidence that's there of what users want, what they like, what they're using, the data allows us to really understand and have some concrete evidence that tells us those things.
And analytics is a little different for software and an app than it is for like a website. So even if you're familiar with that space a little bit, this is something completely different. So,
awesome. I'm excited to dive into it.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys soon. Go check out SaaS Coach. Download some of the resources. Check out our old series and other videos. And please tune in. Next Wednesday, we're going to have an awesome show all about data. Talk to you then.
See you next time.
Bye.